Right, let's begin. Welcome to today's debate. First of all, I would like to say that today's debate will be live streamed on the LinkedIn profile of the Danish Plastics Federation. And you can watch the debate afterwards as well. And if any of you would like to withdraw from that, just let me know. The theme for today's debate is design plastics and sustainable practices. Can they be combined? And the overall question is, what are the challenges for designers wanting to create an environmentally friendly product? And what is more sustainable, wood or plastics? The question I added. My name is Martin. I'm head of communication with the Danish Plastic Federation. And let me introduce today's panel. We have Søren Hinge Christensen from the Association of Danish Wood and Furniture Industries, Arantxa Bakkersen, founder of Small Revolution. Arantxa, sorry, I looked in my papers and not on the stage. We have Lone Mikkelsen, senior advisor from Green Transition Denmark. We have Martin Holm, research and development manager from Letback. And last but not least, Anders Kofod, founding partner of Målbar. And let me begin with you, Arantxa. Your company, Small Revolution, produced these chairs that we see standing around. Why did you start Small Revolution?
I started, to be honest, it was a coincidence. I really just wanted to start something. But then the first material that I looked into was plastic. And then realizing that there was a huge potential in recycled plastic at that time, that's 4 years ago, my fire was turned on. And then we just started building Small Revolution on a focus solely on recycled plastic.
And as I understand it, you don't have a background in plastic production.
No, not at all. I have a background studying political science, so something totally different.
But what's the story about these products?
So the thing is that what is unique for Small Revolution is that we source everything ourselves. That means that I know exactly where everything comes from. So this green one is from Dansk Retursystem, and the purple one is from Herlost. So we know exactly where the waste come from, and that's crucial to us, that we know the stories behind all the products.
So now your products are made of plastic.
It's made
waste.
of 100% recycled plastic. We don't add anything. There's no pigments, there's no resin, there's no metals, there's nothing in it, but 100% recycled plastic.
Could you imagine doing the same thing with wood?
No. No, obviously not. I mean, this is my material, and I think the exciting thing about plastic is that it's also a really controversial material. So there's all these stories that needs to be put out in the open about plastic and why it's such a great material as well. It's also a really bad material if you don't handle it well, and if it's not being recycled and burned off instead of recycled. So there's a paradox in plastic that is super interesting for me.
So the story about the material is important for your company.
Yeah, of course, that's the company. That's the stories behind all the colors and all the companies that are behind, and that's the branding of the company.
There's a lot of talk about, at least in our industry, about keeping the quality of the plastic material. Do you ever consider that in your production, that maybe some of this could have been used for other products?
Yeah, of course, that's the limit, of course, for all of our products is to find plastic that has good enough quality, but at the same time that is not being turned into their own products again. Of course, in the ideal world, the products will be packaging again instead of being turned into a stool. So, I mean, Small Revolution has a really we exist now because there is a hole in the market where companies don't know how to transform their products into their own products again, and that's what's giving us life today.
And just to get it right, these chairs are made of these
Yes.
bottles. And
This chair is made from this purple bottle, and the flower pot is made from this orange packaging. So of course it would be the best that it's being transformed into their own packaging again, but in reality they're not. That's not what's happening out there in the industry.
Okay, Søren from the Danish wood and furniture industry, I'll turn to you. What is the most popular piece of wooden furniture in Denmark?
It's a dining chair made of oak. It's just every company in our business, they have some kind of dining chair made of oak in their assortment.
Yeah.
That's what is the big deal right now.
Just
Oak.
any chair of oak,
Yeah.
not one particular designer.
Oh, I don't think that there are any, just one, but of course the wishbone chair from Ringner is very popular, but also very expensive. And there are a lot of those chairs sold all around the world, and so maybe that's the most popular, but I don't know if that's the one.
How long does a chair like that last, you say?
We don't know.
We don't know?
No. Because chairs made in the 50s, 60s are still sold on DBA or used to be sold on Lauritz, but not anymore. But we actually don't know exactly how long they last.
Could you imagine producing a chair like that in a plastic-based material?
Maybe. So some of the old Werner Panton stools and so on, they are made of plastic, and they are also lasting very long.
A few years ago, the wood and paper industry were getting a lot of heat, you could say. And in a way, the plastic industries have taken over that role as the bad guy today. Do you have any good advice for the plastic industry?
I think that the plastic industry, in fact, are doing very well, because in fact, in the wood and furniture industries, we also have some issues about, we got a lot of spill material. A lot from a tree is locked in the woods until it's a chair. There is a lot of rest materials that are right now just being turned into energy, but that's only until we have built enough windmills and sun panels and so on. Then we need to, the plastic industries has been very innovative how to use materials again and again and again. And in the wooden industry, it has been a saying and that we have the world's most sustainable product material. We don't need to do anything more. But I think that we have to come up on the beat the same way as the plastics has done, and find out new ways to use all this material that right now is just getting burned in a better way.
But how did you come about that when we go back maybe 20 or 30 years?
One of the things is that we have to document that our wood comes from sustainable sources. The certification organizations like FSC and PEFC has been very important in that we actually, when we use wood, can document that it comes from sustainable sources, from places where the growth are bigger than the logging in the woods, and where biodiversity and recreation and so on are taken care of in the woods.
But then again, there are some wood types that you've moved away from.
Yeah.
For instance, palisand. I don't know if that's the English word.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
you wouldn't use that today.
Of course, a lot of tropical species are not used anymore, and that's. Of course, the demands and people's awareness about it has had a lot of influence on that. But also now we have the EU timber regulation, and it's now being transformed into the EU deforestation regulation, and so it's been both from the consumer side and from the authority sides, there's been a lot of work, a lot of pressure on our industry.
Okay, Martin from Letbæk, I want to turn to you. The chairs you're sitting on, all of us, all of you, is designed by Velas and produced by your company. What's the philosophy behind that chair?
Well, it's quite a long story, starting with Henrik Holm, the founder of Velas. Him and Michael, Letbæk's former CEO, met at a fair, I think. And Michael turned to Henrik and asked him if he would be interested in producing a chair made out of plastic. And Henrik is very key on sustainability, and he immediately turned no. He would never make a chair out of plastic because that was, in his understanding, not a sustainable way of making chairs. But Michael convinced him to try and look deeper into it and see the solutions in recycled plastics. And that actually turned Henrik a bit on the other hand, and he started investigating in what recycled plastic meant and found out that it's quite a unique solution and very good material to produce dining chairs like the ones you're sitting on. And then the whole development and design of the chair slowly started, and we tried to use as little component outside of plastic and metal as possible, and trying to keep it very simple and very clean.
But what's it made of, the seat?
The seat is made of marine plastic. So basically most of it is from ropes from fishing nets, and the only thing added to the compound is the normal process stabilizer and the pigment for keeping the color within a fair tolerance. So 98% of the plastic in the chair is recycled plastic.
And you made a black version as well?
Yeah, the black version is 100% electronic e-waste, so cabinets and stuff like that from old VCRs, computer, etc.
Is there anything in this recycled material that challenges you? Is there anything that...
Well, the whole start of the project was a big challenge because the way you are producing fishing nets today is an extrusion way, and the chair are injection molding, and these are just two opposite manufacturing ways of doing things. And the DNA of the plastic is made for extrusion, so it's very tough material and it doesn't flow very, very well. So we needed to develop a tool where we could easily inject the thick plastic into the mold. So the whole process has been not a nightmare, but I think we were the first movers to really investigate this material together with Plastix, the supplier of the material. So there's been a lot of bumps on the way, but in the end, I think it turned out quite well. And I think it was because it was one of the first chairs in the north to use these recycled materials and really tell a story about it. I think it was, for the whole industry, a very good move for Henrik to make. I for sure wouldn't be sitting here today if Henrik didn't start this project.
And your company, Letbæk, has developed a CO2 calculator as well?
Yeah, that's right.
What's the story behind that?
Well, I actually think some of cooperation together with Molbar, but we made kind of our own calculator because we wanted really down to every machine, every line, every production way, and really get in deep with the product. And we develop it together with our ERP system. So if you go to Letbæk and you want to get an offer of a product, on the invoice or the offer sheet, you'll get the numbers. What would this product cost CO2 footprint in virgin material, and what will it be in recycled material? And this really helps customers also argument to their customers why use recycled materials instead of virgins. Because when you get them black and white right next to each other, you really can't choose the virgin version if it's possible to do in recycled. Because price-wise, we're more or less the same. It varies on colors and technical stuff, but otherwise it's kind of the same. So why not choose the better solution?
And you offer this as a standard on all your products since
it's a standard.
2021.
You get it on the invoices, you get it on the quotes, you get it on everything, all products.
Can you see a change?
For sure. For sure, we see a demand from the clients all of a sudden because this was something that didn't exist. So we actually created that demand. So I think it's a very clever way to push not only the clients but also the business. because our competitors need to follow up. They need to do the same.
Okay, Anders from Molbar, you offer CO2 and LCA analysis for primarily the wood and furniture industries.
We offer a tool which can calculate climate footprints of the products, and it's actually something that the customer does themselves. They can also hire us to do it, but I mean, the idea is that they actually do their calculations on their own.
And what are they being used for?
Well, we got most of our customers in the design and furniture industry, as you say, but we can calculate all industrial products. It's not just in this area. But apparently there was a big need in this area, so this is why it's spread very much among design and furniture customers.
Like we just had a talk right before you got on stage, and I have this doubt all the time about LCAs and CO2 calculations, about how reliable are they really? Can you say anything about that? Because you put in a lot of data into this calculator.
Yeah. When we talk about climate footprints, the calculation of climate emissions is quite reliable and robust. But there are many, of course, you have to be within certain methods and guidelines when you calculate. And this means you follow standards, international standards, but they are various and they all differ slightly. So it actually means that if you don't know what standards have been followed and what rules, calculation rules have been followed for the product you're looking at, you don't know if you can compare it with another product. So we have to be sure that the same method is being followed. And we follow a method called PEF, which is developed by the European Commission, because they want to make it possible for consumers to compare LCA results on products. And this method ensures that there's a tight monitoring and rules being used.
So would you say that we are in the childhood era of LCA calculations?
I think we have to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
We're still in
And
the
everyone are
early
making
phase.
their own.
Still in the early phase, and most people haven't really got any experience with LCAs and know how to interpret them. Most LCAs is about more than just climate and many other environmental parameters which are also measured, and how to actually compare them.
Yeah.
It can become very difficult to try and get an overview.
So if I buy a chair from Ledbeck, I can see the calculations compared to a chair made from Ledbeck from another material. But if I want to buy a chair from you and compare it with a chair from you, it gets complicated, right?
I think,
Unless they get their numbers from you. Both of them.
I mean, yes, the advantage, of course, of using our system is that everything you calculate within that will be comparable, because the conditions are the same for calculating. But yes, you're right.
Lone Mikkelsen from Råd for Grøn Omstilling. What are the biggest challenges for sustainable design today?
One of the big challenges is that we talk a lot about recyclability and not reuse. We need to talk a lot more about reuse and also reduce. These different materials and products should have a long lifespan before we talk recyclability, and some of this might have a long lifespan, the reused plastic, but it's really important that we produce different products to be able to have a long lifetime. So we can reuse it, like for the same, like this chair it probably wouldn't break, but if this chair would break, it should be repairable.
Yeah.
And
So you would argue I should use this for a new bottle of shampoo, or
we should use the same bottle. We should wash it and
shampoo.
use the same bottle.
Yeah, for another bottle of shampoo instead
And
of a
we
chair.
should refill it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
And
there are some challenges
There are challenges. For one, it's a challenge that the political system hasn't made more incitements to produce like this. From the EU system, they talk recyclable. So, of course, this is what businesses, that's the aim that they have to live up to. And when we talk recyclability, like these products, I do have some concerns because this chair is made from Dansk Retursystems products. And in my opinion, that should be made, that's bottles from different drinking.
No, it's the containers.
Oh, it's the
That's
containers.
taking all the bottles.
Okay, so it's not
It's not the bottles itself.
so it's not the food materials. Okay, then my concern is less, because these materials should be used for the same for food products. We have a lot of rules about chemicals, for instance. So all the most concerning chemicals are not in these products, and it should be made to the same. When we recycle, it should be made to new food contact materials.
I know you're concerned about chemicals. That you say that chemicals are a hindrance for recycling.
Yeah, to a great extent. And it, in my opinion, my concern is it's not to a great enough extent. We should be more concerned about these chemicals than we are today. I don't think the rules are enough. And also my second concern is this chair made from e-waste, because e-waste is one of those products groups that has the highest extent of hazardous chemicals, like brominated flame retardants, for instance, which is persistent and very hazardous to our health, also to the environment.
And what should be done with that material instead? Because now, at least, now we have it.
If we keep doing as today, where all these chemicals, or many of these chemicals are admitted, they can use it still, then we should not recycle products like this unless we can take out all the hazardous chemicals. And you might have done that, I'm not sure, but that would be a concern. I would never buy a chair if it just said recycle from e-waste, unless it said, and of course we took out all the hazardous chemicals.
But say we wanted to reuse our products more, and I had this bottle of shampoo at home, I would have to go to Hair Lost. This one is made in Denmark. I would have to give it back there and maybe buy a new bottle. I don't know, somehow. But say the toothpaste or the other shampoo I have at home is made in Sweden or Germany and so on. It requires some very closed systems.
Yeah, it requires a system like Dansk Retursystem. We see it to a little extent in the takeaway area, where some companies have tried or started to make reusable boxes and plastic bags and so on.
Coffee cups and beer
Exactly.
cups and stuff like that.
And often you have to take it back to maybe not the same store, or cafe or whatever, but that group of cafes and restaurants that have signed up for this product type.
But when we talk about design and furniture design, for instance, in this pavilion, the base of the walls here, as well as the big room over here, is 3D printed with excess plastic and wood fiber materials. What's your view on that? A way like that to recycle the material?
Yeah, I would not be sure it's able to recycle, because it's
Well, it is recycled now.
yeah, now it's recycled, but can we recycle that product? Because now it's plastic and wood, and it's okay, we can. So that should be, so when the systems are there, it would be fine. But it's very important that we ensure that this recyclability is possible before we put the product on the market.
I would love to recycle the sheets.
The sheets, yeah, the posters. You have an idea there for a new product? Yeah.
Just a stool, turn it into a stool.
New colors.
Søren, I want to ask you, could you imagine making a design chair out of combined plastic and wood fiber?
Yeah, why not? Yeah, certainly. We have to, the innovation that has been going on in the plastic industry has been enormous. And for instance, for wood, we use this cascade principle where we need to keep wood in as large fibers as possible before it ends up burnt. But there is a lot of also a lot of challenges in that, and that's also related to chemicals, for instance, glue. And there hasn't been enough research in can we make some new kind of glues that make it easier to reuse wooden fiber or wooden fiber what do you call it? Plates? No, not plates. Panels.
Panels,
Panels for longer. And also one of the things that you mentioned here also about right now it's all small companies that have to make their own take-back deals and take care of all this. I'm quite convinced that we now see it with the packaging, where the extended producer responsibility for packaging comes from EU, comes from all other products now, that we need to make some bigger collectives, some common agreements on how to recollect all kinds of material, all kinds of products again, because
so just a few kinds of bottles, but then different labels maybe.
Yeah, and it should be like the Danish Returpantsystem.
Yeah.
Be a place where you can do it, some hubs where you can deliver all your wood material. We have it right now in the Danish municipalities, but a lot of that is wasted and not reused as many times as you actually could be. But that's also right now because we need a lot of energy. So there is a lot of competition about these low-grade, low-quality wood fibers right now. And also maybe a little better quality. But we need to make some systems where it's easy for the companies and the consumers to make the fibers and all kinds of materials last longer.
I want to get back to the two of you, which is sort of a split responsibility. You produce products or design products made of recycled material. But, and I'm teasing you a bit here, did you do that because you saw a business or to do good?
Both, of course. I mean, it has to go hand in hand. If we have to get volume and scale and change the structures of the plastic industry and the material industry, we have to have a business. That's crucial. Otherwise, it's just a hobby, and then I could have a better salary in the government. I mean, but so it's both, of course. It's for me, it's motivating to do both.
Are these chairs only made from these bottles or anything else?
Yeah, there's also powder in it.
Powder,
recycled powder as well. So
Okay.
that's the resin. That's not resin, but that's the glue of all the products.
But to produce this chair, you're reliant on a lot of purple shampoo bottles.
Yeah, of course.
And when you run out
course.
of whenever that company
when I-
closes, or what, you will have to make another.
Of course, that's the thing with the limited edition colors.
Yeah.
It's a limited edition, so there might only be 20 of these stools, and when they're out, they're out.
Okay.
Then we have to do a new collaboration, or we have to produce our standard colors, which is one of these. This jade color is one of our standard colors because they keep on being containers from Dansk Retursystem.
Yeah.
So we have like 5 standard colors that we produce big amounts of, and then we have these limited edition colors that we only produce like super small amount.
And Martin, will you run out of
Sadly,
I have to say no.
Ocean plastic?
Sadly, I have to say no, because we are in a global situation where we use a lot of plastic, and it is very hard to reuse things. And I also think, I won't call it naive, but we can all agree here that we could easily wash this bottle and return it somewhere, but I don't think it will happen. maybe us here will do it, but if you look at the large scale, we need to think outside of our world, because there's a whole nother world that are using plastic every day, and we need to embrace this plastic as well, and don't let the perfect kill the good, because we can still use the plastic. We can still create chairs out of recycled materials, and I really think we also need to put in some focus there. We at Letbæk live on circular economy and love take back solutions, but this is not the whole solution. We need to look at the bigger picture as well.
How do you see that, Lone? Are companies like Letbæk and Small Revolution, do they have a solution for our problems?
Yeah, I agree that we cannot close our eyes to the bigger problem, because there will be a lot of plastic out there in many years ahead. And again, it has to go hand in hand, because we cannot stop doing this just because we do the other thing. But on the other hand, we can't not do better just because there's a lot of plastic out there and they all use it in a wrong way. So why should we do better? But as a very rich country, and we are in Europe, we have the highest amount of garbage in Denmark. Yeah. So we have a huge consumption, and we have to do better in Europe as a whole. We cannot do it alone as a country, and not especially because we are a very small country. But the European policies should be leading in this area.
But I agree very much on there is a responsibility for the legislation of what plastic can you use in which products, because the new things we are creating of virgin materials, we need these materials to be very good, because we need to recycle them in a couple of years, because we cannot only have a solution that is reusing. We need something so that we are certain that the plastic is of best quality and we don't get anything. The e-waste, I'm actually not 100% sure on how that is sorted out. I'm pretty sure it is, but we need to be sure of this. Of course, we cannot take in plastic that are contaminated of any kind. So we really need to build something up that we can live off from many years.
What happens when, because design and furniture, it's a question of trend also. Yeah. And now an oak table would last for, I don't know, 100 years, maybe, even longer. But let's say in 30 years, I want to redesign this.
Yeah, but I mean, if Small Revolution still exists in 30 years, and hopefully we do, of course we take it back. We do that today as well. If it's broken, or if people don't want this color, but they want this color, of course we take it back and then we remold it and then do everything again. I think at one point, that because there is a limit on how many times you can recycle plastic. So it might be that
theoretically.
And to be honest, I don't know. I haven't recycled this 6 or 7 times. This is the first generation of recycled plastic from Dansk Retursystem. So, but of course we take it back and then remold it, and that's why it's only one type of plastic. There's nothing in it, because we have to be able to take it back and do our thing again with it. So it could be from this stool to this stool, to you could actually have a product that can follow you. The material follows you all the way through your life, and it just changes the product. So when you're a child, this is a great stool, and when you're older, you might turn it into a flower pot, whatever. So that's the idea with Small Revolution, that you can take it back over and over and over again and turn it into new products.
And that is the unique solution of plastic, that you're able to do it. Because when we look at wood, it's very hard to make a design of a chair when you produce it or introduce it to the market. Are you sure this is going to last 50 years as a designer? That's a tough job. Where this one, let's say this design should fail, well, you can remold it into something else.
Yeah.
I want to say we do have a few examples in Danish design that last for many years. Yeah.
We are talking a lot about the material, but I think we are over-focusing on the material. We have to look at the whole life cycle of the product, because what really matters is where are the most emissions. We are in a terrible rush to try and cut down, especially on climate emissions. We have to cut down 43% within 2030. So we can't talk about the little nitty-gritty things. We have to look at each product, where are the big emissions which we are able to cut down. So we're talking about bottles with, like shampoo bottles. Maybe we shouldn't talk so much about the plastic, but maybe we should talk about the shampoo, because that's probably emitting a lot more than the bottle itself. When you're talking about a stool like this, in this case recycled plastic, we should look at a common stool and see how does that perform when you compare with a wooden stool, for instance. How is the emissions from the production of it, from the transport of it? And then we get an idea about if it's a material really, which really is the problem or not. In most cases, it's actually not.
It's the use of it, or the
It could be the
transportation.
use of it, especially if it consumes energy in its use phase. Yes, then the use phase can become quite emitting.
Is it, honestly, is it your impression that after you started looking into LCAs and CO2 numbers, that the processes in the production has changed?
No, unfortunately, we haven't been that long in the business, so that we have seen that the production emissions go down. You're talking about
Yeah.
the energy consumption is reduced. I think we will see, because we don't have the accurate emissions number from production. We are relying on average emissions from typical productions. But then when we look at specific productions like Letbek do, then we will probably see that their emissions are much lower because they have a focus on reducing energy. So they're good at doing that. I think we will see it when the ones who are focusing on doing something about it are lucky enough to be able to reduce emissions and energy consumption.
So it's going to be a long streak before we turn it around.
Yes, but it's going to take some time, but it's important that we all focus on it, because the producers will not do it if there's no focus. If we continue focusing on the material, the production of the product is going to be forgotten, overlooked.
Yeah, Søren?
I agree a lot, but we could see also when the energy crisis started after the war in Ukraine, a lot of companies actually started to say, how can we reduce our own in our own production our energy consumption? And
one could argue they did that for the sake of their own company,
they
not the
did, but
greater
they
good.
did, certainly did. And right now there is a lot of companies making their climate account right now, and they can see that their own production, in fact, fills up a very small part of it. It's all in their sourcing. And then they see, okay, 90% of their CO2 footprint inherits from the sourcing. And then they start to look at where do we source, and can we find some new places to buy our material, and that's here where the transportation suddenly also starts to count a lot, and they start to look more in the near areas. So, of course, when we have LCAs and reliable LCAs and the environmental footprint, in fact, will be a parameter that also in the big public, what do you call it, what? Yeah, tenders, public tenders. Yeah, then and also the big private tenders. Then you will see some movement, and then you will see movement on a large scale where it really counts.
But now we talk about design today and sustainable design. Do you really think that designers, maybe new startup companies, are thinking all these things?
I think that startup companies are thinking it a lot.
Even more,
and it's much easier for them to make a sustainable production, because they can start from scratch, and they don't have a very big production, like, for instance, Carl Hansen, that produces the Wishbone's chair and has done it the same way in 50, 60 years. It's much easier to make it right from the beginning than to start to turn a coaster.
One thing that we haven't touched upon is the fear of greenwashing, or the threat of greenwashing. There have been examples with smaller companies that have had critique because they did a few things wrong, unintendedly, maybe. Do you think the fear of greenwashing, or the fear of being blamed for greenwashing, are preventing some from doing good?
Yes, certainly. Yeah. And many companies, they maybe they do it, but they don't sell right now. But a lot
Maybe
of
they do
some-
what?
They may be right now, for instance, reducing their energy consumption, and they are sourcing only certified wood or something like that. But they are not telling because they don't dare to be blamed for greenwashing. And I think that's, as you said, let's not perfect kill the good intentions. So I think it's a pity sometimes, because it will prevent some from starting.
You come from a smaller company.
Yeah, but I think the problem is that there's no common standards. We don't know what is greenwashing. Of course, when you mix marine waste together with textiles, of course, it might be that you can recycle it, but is it better that it's turned into something that it's not being turned into something? I think it's super difficult when there's no standards, there's no certificates, there's nothing that can guide us. So the only thing is like the stomach. So for example, when I have huge companies asking, can I put pigments in it because they want, a design company wants a special color? Is that greenwashing or is it not greenwashing if we put pigments in it? We don't do it now, but it's definitely something that we have to consider in the future. Should we put pigments in it in order to scale? Or is it okay when we mix, or if we mix plastic types, then we can't recycle it again, but then we have turned it into one new life? Would that be okay, or will it not be okay? Is that greenwashing or is it not? Is it okay when you mix plastic waste together with metals? Is that greenwashing? So it's super difficult when there's no standards. We need to have standards to guide us.
What was it? Was it a question that you had in mind when you started the company?
No, not at all. For me, it was super simple, just to make it in one type of plastic, and just to have production in Denmark. We still have production in Denmark, so it's more something that's going on now. Being a small company that is scaling, it's definitely a scale thing that we're considering now. Should we keep to our super circular, sustainable values? Or is there any way where it's okay? Is it okay to have production in Poland? Is it okay to put pigments? Is it okay to mix plastic types? So it's definitely a scalable problem.
So you're arguing for some kind of standards for
course.
new.
Of course, and what is greenwashing? I mean, that's.
Well, I had a discussion with the Forbrugerombudsmanden on Folkemødet this year about also greenwashing and kind of the same debate. And what she said is that we have markedsføringsloven, which says more or less clear what you can do and not do when you brand your product. And some of your questions, I'm not sure I understand, because why should it be greenwashing that you mix plastic and metal, for instance? It's in the branding, and it's for the consumer's sake that they won't buy your product because they are lied to. So if it's recycled plastic, you can't write it's recycled plastic if it's 10% recycled plastic. But you can write it's 10% recycled plastic. You cannot write it's sustainable because production is not sustainable. Yeah. It's more sustainable than other products if you can prove it. But for me, I'm not the consumer organization, but we have some of the same thoughts. And for me also as a consumer, I need to know, I would like to buy more sustainable, but I need to know what am I buying? So for me, it's a great help if it says recycled 10% or recycled 100%.
You could say that we, in a way, in society, all are developing our experience these years, all of us, and
Agreed.
probably some companies, I would imagine, small startup companies, they're not aware of this, perhaps. They focus on the design and maybe the business.
But it's legislation. They should be aware of it. I'm
So-
sorry to say, but it's just a consumer safety.
So the idea of standardization of the greenwashing term is not needed in your mind.
I'm not sure you can make standards, because then again you would have some issues that are not covered, and then again a small company would have a greater challenge than the bigger companies. It will always be like that, and is that fair? No, I'm not sure, because but it is a challenge. They have more power in the greater companies. They have more resources.
I just want to ask you, Martin, is it anything that you have had in mind in your products?
Yeah, but I agree with both of you. Sometimes I don't even dare to say anything about, because you'll end in the news somewhere because you said something, and that's the new laws came where you couldn't say sustainable anymore. We got a guide course on how to say things because you can get caught up somewhere. So this green hushing, I totally understand.
But you were, before we met, you were very precise about the chairs are not made of fishing nets, but of fishing net material.
Yeah, it's mainly from the ropes that are either on the fishing nets or ropes from marine in general.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm starting to be more precise because of all that has happened the last few years. Because when I started working together with Arantxa also, it was very easy. You just came with a recycled product and everybody was happy. But now it's almost a nightmare because you need to know the source, that it has been a bracelet on a holy cow in India and been shipped here by something. It's a nightmare to put everything together, and you know from the calculations that it's very important, everything. So standards or speak common language. I think that's important for sure. Yeah.
Lone?
But it's also important not with this focus on greenwashing, because otherwise I think the consumers will get blind for this or deaf, because then suddenly you hear that all the good brands, they have been taken by the Forbrugerombudsman, and then you lose your will to do this, and then what should I believe? So it's very important that it gets very precise, and it is very important about the source, even though I understand it's very complicated. But it is important because it makes a huge difference if it's from a food product material, or it's like a glass could contain some water or whatever, coffee, or it's from a fishing rope, or it's from another e-waste, electronics, where there are totally other rules for chemicals.
But whether, say, I have a bottle with a laundry detergent at home and it says like 98% recycled, whether it's 98% or 75%, does it really matter for me as a consumer?
You can be pushing the market by showing that I want a more recyclable material. I'm not sure it's always a good thing, because I know a lot of more and more textiles are being made of reused plastic, or recycled plastic, not reused. And many of these sources are from food product materials, and they should not be used for textiles. They should be used for food contact materials. So that's also a very difficult area. Where should we use the resources?
Anders?
Yes, I think it's also important to note that if you make a claim, an environmental claim, and say that you have a recycled material in a product, it also has to be relevant for the product and for the environment. So if the emissions from using a recycled material in your product doesn't really change the products environmental performance, then you're actually greenwashing. This means it becomes very difficult to do environmental claims unless you've done LCA on your product. So you know exactly where are the largest emissions, and am I targeting the ones which really matters.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's because right now in the last years we've been focusing a lot of carbon dioxide on the climate, but now fortunately also we start to look a little more on the circular economy and how to be able to use things longer and reuse and so on, and so. But maybe sometimes there is a contradiction, because if you want to reuse, sometimes it can be maybe more energy demanding to reuse than actually take virgin material but renewable material like wood. And so it's very hard to compare, and what is the most sustainable thing, to use renewable materials or to reuse. But I think they need to go hand in hand, because we need to reduce our consumption of virgin materials. That's in fact maybe the most important thing of all. Then we have to find ways to manage to reduce the CO2 emissions from that. And that's reducing transports and find some good scaling up, collecting ways to collect materials and use them again in a good way. But it is something, it's very hard, and that's also when you start to making these greenwashing, talking about greenwashing, because sometimes it's good for something but bad for something else.
Yeah. You wanted to add something?
Yeah, just I agree that we need more transparency in general, and also why we started this side company called MyCollect, where you have this electronic NFC patch underneath, for example, the chair, where you can, as a consumer, scan the product, and here you can actually see what is the source, what do you do if the back breaks off, who do you call to get it repaired. If it's leather furniture, there's a manual how to maintain the product to give it longer life, and we really try to engage the consumer with knowledge and also what to do at end of life. That's one thing, and the other one is a comment on the, if it takes more emission to produce a new, I don't know what kind of products, but we try to do this calculation. You probably tried it 100 times, but we try taking these dry protecting mats into the calculation. How much emission on one plate from virgin material? What if it's recycled? What if we get the recycled in and recycle it again? And what if we reuse? And we can only see it gets better and better and better. And it's a huge difference from virgin to recycled. And even if you recycle it one more time, instead of burning it, it actually takes more carbon footprint burning a mat than it does to produce a new one. I don't know if you tried the calculation, but it.
I don't know the product or the material. So
it's just a polyethylene dry protection mat, and it's quite amazing to see the numbers, how they dance around if you do one thing or the other with it.
I guess it all comes down to how long do we use the products and what are they made for. Furniture is designed for a long life, as opposed to a water bottle or something like that. I wanted to open up for questions, if there are any questions among the audience. Yes, just come over with a microphone near the speaker. Yeah. Let's try.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Sarah. I also have a circular design company called Folk. And I often ask myself, when we are working with recycled materials, if we are kind of supporting more consumption on the virgin materials. So I just wanted to get your comments on this and how long we are ready to support this transition,
So I have the same headache every month or every. I mean, it's we don't need more stools or flower pots in the world. I think from my point of view, this is also a way, because design products is super good to show the circular economy and the potential of it. In reality, I would love if Small Revolution could take a way where we not only produce design products, but where we also produce relevant product for the medical industry or for the construction industry, or where it's actually relevant products in the world and not more stools or more flower pots. These are just products because it's super good to kick in and to show the potential of the circular economy in plastics. Yeah.
Any other comments to that? No. We have a question here. There you go.
Hi, I'm Ling, and I have a circular running wear, trying to extend the life of runwear so we don't produce new. But in regards to the LCA, I've been looking into it as well, and I find it quite challenging. Now we produce in China, and even if we moved it to EU, there's still, I find it problematic, because what I see from our LCA, it's about the most emission comes from the spinning. And I have been trying to talk to our suppliers about that as well. But in China, they say, well, it's the government who is making that decision. We can't just put solar panels on the roof or whatever you want us to do. So in regards to being a brand, is it our task to, of course, design for circularity, but it also becomes something political and quite big an issue that and how do we approach it? Because then I can look for factories in EU, and it seems that they do have partially solar panels, which is the right way to do, but it's not in the spinning, it's in the sewing. So there's like, okay, how do you actually dig into and finding the right way to do? And I agree with Lone that it's of course about telling the right story and why you chose this way instead of that way. But it's quite challenging being a brand.
Okay, I don't know, maybe it's a question for you, Lone. Is it up to the producer and the designer?
Well, as you say, no, not always, because there are rules, and the government or the EU legislation for our case will often decide. But yeah, well, I can just agree that it is super difficult.
Anders?
I can say that for the EU, you can buy green energy. You can purchase green energy certificates for your production, which means that it's acknowledged that the energy used has low emissions. That will bring down your footprint. That means that in the whole of the EU, all the EU countries have access to green energy, no matter where they are, no matter if they're wind farms or hydropower plants. They have access to green energy because green energy flows in the whole energy grid of the EU, but you have to buy access to it. You're not allowed to claim it unless you have bought green certificates on the green energy that you consume. It's a huge advantage for EU because it means all productions have access to it if they want it, and they can pay for it. I don't think it's very much more expensive, actually. I think it's just a fraction more expensive than normal electricity. But the problem remains with areas where this green certificate system is not acknowledged, like China, that doesn't have a system. So in these cases, they have to establish renewable energy on the production site, like solar power or windmills or...
Perhaps the scopes. I mean, if you're looking in the, as we've been looking in the tier 1, 2, and then 3, maybe it's also perhaps could be a way to just look at the LCAs and see, okay, where is the biggest emission, and not looking into the scopes entirely.
It's always a good idea to start to look at where are the big emissions, and then of course target them first to get most impact. Yeah.
Arantxa, you wanted to add something?
Just your last question about, is it the responsibility of the brand? And I really think it is. Of course, it's also the responsibility of the government and the consumer, but being the owner of a brand, I think it's very much my responsibility that I know where I produce, and I try my best all the time to produce it in a more CO2 friendly and less waste way. I think it's totally up to the brand to be more responsible. If not, if I'm not doing that, I mean, who else should do it? So we need to be responsible brands, and start from there.
I guess this example also shows that it all comes down to money and globalization,
like
right?
Else,
Just to say, I agree with you that you have a huge responsibility, but historically, we can just say that it doesn't happen out of nowhere. Legislation have to be there,
Of course.
because then follows the money. So it's just historically, it won't happen. That's what history shows us.
Actually, there is a very good example of environmental progress that has happened. That happened when the EU made the energy certificate in the mid-90s, where all white goods had to have that label of A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and the colors. It took a few years, then the whole market underneath with a I think it was E, G, F, that simply fell out.
Legislation.
It was legislation that had to mark their products.
Yeah.
Yes.
So still, it has to follow with legislation, and now they're doing it on way more product groups and talk about safe and sustainable by design for many product groups. And I think this is the way forward.
Yeah.
I'm really hopeful that this can
So they don't
really be a
So they may not need to ban
big
products,
change.
but actually enforce that there's more information about them.
yeah.
That's
I
more or
agree.
less the standard.
Yeah, that's the standard.
It doesn't have to be a standard, it just have to be a level.
Yeah.
Where are you? Instead of it's always a comparison between some other thing.
So,
It starts to get complicated now because with the electronics, it was just the use, how much energy did they use. But now with the eco design regulation, suddenly other parameters are also being counted, and that's then it starts to get complicated because the intention to removing the 30% baddest products within every product group is very good, but how do we actually measure within these product groups? And they are formulating it right now for many of the product groups, and it's very interesting how it will turn out because it's not an easy task.
okay. If there are no more questions, I think that concludes it. We can agree that it's a challenge. Nothing happens without legislation, and that we should design for a longer lifespan of the products. Thank you for being here, all of you, and streamed on our LinkedIn page. And if you didn't see it all, you can go back and check it out. Thank you.